My wife did go to the party, even though I asked her to stay home to spend time together. Later, I found out that she had betrayed me, and I decided to. My wife went out partying without me, even after I asked her not to. Later, I discovered that she had cheated. Now, I've stumbled upon this forum, hoping to find some support if you're willing. To give you a bit of background, I'm a 30-year-old man, and my wife is 25. We've been married for 3 years and together for nearly 6. We don't have any children or significant assets and are in more debt than we have cash in our checking account. We rent a house and am the primary breadwinner, bringing home roughly $4,000 a month, while she nets around $1,500. I work tirelessly to provide her with the lifestyle she's accustomed to, and now I'm facing the unimaginable. My work family is quite close-knit. A co-worker of nearly 3 years invited me to join a recreational soccer league, which I've been a part of for 2 years now. My wife would attend every game, which I thought was her way of showing support. But deep down, I suspected she was more interested in the alcohol that flowed freely at these events. Most nights when I had games, I would take it easy on the drinks, but she, as a spectator, would get quite tipsy. After the games, it was common for a few of us, both guys and girls, to gather at various places and hang out into the night. Sometimes we'd go back to my place, or we'd hit a bar, pizza joint, etc. A couple of weeks ago, a group planned to get together at one of the guys' houses in a nearby city. After the game, I told everyone that we wouldn't be joining because I had to work early the next morning. During the ride home, my wife texted one of the guys I considered a buddy, asking him for a ride to the party. She then asked me if it was okay for her to go. I said no, explaining that I wanted to be with her that night. She responded with the silent treatment, obviously irritated. When we got home, a car pulled up in front of the house. It was my buddy. Despite my anger, I went to his car and told him that I wasn't okay with this and asked him to leave, but my wife got out of our car and into his, and they drove away. In my fury, I plugged in the old iPad I had bought her years ago, knowing it was linked to her messaging and social media accounts. I saw exactly where she was and tried to stay up, but I finally fell asleep around 3 a.m. She still wasn't home. When I woke up the next morning, she was in our bed, though I had no idea when she had returned. I got ready for work and left without waking her or kissing her goodbye, the first and only time I had done that. Before I left for work, I grabbed the iPad and put it in my briefcase. At work, after a meeting and a few calls, I checked the iPad and saw a notification from a messaging app. Buddy is typing. I opened the app and saw a horrifying exchange of messages that were supposed to self-destruct, but this app version was outdated, allowing me to witness their conversation in real time. Buddy was making references to them making love and mentioned other guys who had fun last night. I nearly lost it. It got worse. I watched as my wife asked Buddy to send her a video of him pleasuring himself, which he did, and I unfortunately witnessed it. Shaking and nauseous, I ran to the bathroom and vomited. I was in shock and got permission to leave work for the day. After several hours of trying to calm down, I was genuinely afraid I might hurt someone or myself. I drove home to find her still sleeping. I put my things down and asked her to come downstairs. Sitting across from her, I asked her to recount everything that happened the previous night. She admitted to just drinking, playing pool, and talking. When I asked when she last spoke with Buddy, she said they had messaged a bit that morning, but nothing significant. Then I dropped the bombshell. Would your story change if you knew I saw your entire conversation with him this morning? She burst into tears and asked, "Are you leaving me?" She then confessed, saying she couldn't remember everything clearly, but had sex with Buddy and another teammate that night. She admitted there might have been more guys, but she couldn't remember. I was utterly disgusted. When I asked if this was the first time, she shockingly admitted that there had been other occasions, including once in our house while I was sleeping upstairs. That was the breaking point for me. Feeling numb, I helped her pack a bag, and she left to stay with her family, pleading with me not to tell anyone. Now, I'm 2 weeks out from D-Day, feeling lost and unsure of what to do. I sincerely hope my experience isn't the worst out there, but it's hard to imagine anything more devastating than discovering your wife in a gangbang scenario with men you considered friends. To make it worse, this had been happening for months with at least one of them. She's blaming it all on alcohol now, promising to start AA and suggesting couples therapy. She wants us to work through this together, but I think it's too late. Despite feeling like a fool, I'm overwhelmed with a mix of pity, guilt, and anger. I have a meeting with an attorney tomorrow, and I'd like to believe I'm making the right move. No matter how much she insists on her alcoholism being the problem and her desire to fix things, I can't even talk to her without imagining her in those degrading situations. I can't trust her. I'm disgusted by her repeated actions. I know I deserve better, yet I still feel guilty. There's no reconciling this, right? I'm not the bad guy, am I? Any support or advice would be greatly appreciated. Writing this all out makes me feel foolish, but it's hard to stop caring about someone who completely blindsided you. Please be gentle with me. Update 1. I truly appreciate all the advice, concern, and positivity you've all sent my way. It's been almost a month since my initial post, and many kind people have reached out to check in on me. Unfortunately, my situation has gone from horrific to unbelievably evil. Words can't even describe it. I apologize in advance for the long update, but it's necessary to paint the full picture of my devastation. Days after my first post, I took your advice and scheduled a few appointments with attorneys and a legal document preparation specialist to explore my options. My wife was unaware of these meetings. For a few days, we had no direct contact, but she was insistent on seeing a marriage therapist, which I had been pushing for months before my D-Day to see if there was any way to salvage our relationship. She managed to get us on a therapist's schedule, but we had to wait about a week and a half for our appointment. During that waiting period, I obsessively monitored her every move through that damned iPad. I scrutinized every message, checked Facebook, Snapchat, everything I could. After a week and a half of this, I found no further evidence, and I started to believe she might be genuinely remorseful. When we finally saw the therapist, he asked why we were there. I let her tell the story in her own words. She left out some details, but most of it was laid out on the table. After hearing everything, the therapist turned to me and asked how I felt about my trust in her and our marriage. Shaking my head in disbelief, I replied, "If I don't say this out loud now, I never will. There's no coming back from this for me. The marriage is over. The vows were broken, my trust is shattered, and the only thing left to do is get a divorce." My gut wrenched as she broke down in hysterical tears. I continued, "I don't know what can be salvaged from this. The marriage is over. I meant every word I said at the altar, and I'd be lying to myself if I didn't acknowledge this as broken beyond repair." Saying it out loud in front of her and a neutral party brought a slight sense of relief. The rest of the therapist's appointment was spent with him explaining to her why my feelings and decision were completely rational, given the circumstances, and calming her down. Honestly, it couldn't have gone better. He insisted on seeing us individually, to help us as individuals first, and maybe, years down the line, discussing reconciliation. Let me be clear. I have no intention of considering reconciliation, but individual therapy might actually help me. Before I go on, I knew I was about to embark on a legal journey that could be ugly and financially devastating in a no-fault state, with me as the breadwinner. I've documented the legal process, but I'm waiting until things are locked in before posting it online. Too risky for now. The key point is that I need to keep things amicable. Fast forward about a week and a half. By now, we've each had at least one individual therapy session. Her narrative to her family is that we're ending the marriage because of broken vows, but we're both trying to heal. She's still staying with family, and I continue my obsessive search of her digital presence for any signs of continued infidelity. Many of you suggested she'd continue her disgusting habits, and it turns out you were right. Not that I wouldn't have been searching anyway. One night last week, I realized I hadn't checked the App Store. I looked at the app download history on her iCloud account and saw that almost 2 weeks earlier, she had downloaded a secret texting app onto her phone. My gut wrenched. She had gone out of her way to hide her communications from me, knowing I had her iPad. She insisted I keep the iPad to rebuild trust, but I think she didn't realize that app downloads are visible across all iCloud-connected devices. I needed to know what was in that app. Without even thinking, I downloaded the app onto her iPad, tried a few common login combinations, and voila, the truth was revealed. She'd been messaging Buddy on this app since after our first therapy appointment, and they had continued having sex, scheduling their encounters when she knew I'd be out of town. I was devastated. It was 3 a.m. on a weeknight, and I went to the bathroom, grabbing all the prescription-strength medications I could find. I returned to my room with a handful of assorted pills, ready to end it all. Sobbing, I sat on the edge of my bed, overwhelmed with despair. I tried calling my mom. No answer. I called my dad. No answer. Finally, I called my sister, and she picked up. Through violent outbursts of tears, I told her what I'd discovered. She could tell I was on the verge of losing it. She didn't know about the pills in my hand but insisted on keeping me on the phone until I calmed down. After about an hour, I was numb again. I put the pills back in their bottle, washed my hands, and tried to get some sleep, but it never came. Realizing I couldn't stand to be in that house any longer, I got dressed for work, throwing the bottle of pills and the iPad into my briefcase. When I arrived at the office, I handed both to my most trusted coworker, asking him to lock them in his desk and not return them to me, no questions asked. He obliged and gave me an understanding pat on the shoulder as I walked away. Now, I've done it. I found what I was looking for, undeniable proof that my wife is not only a cheater, but also a cold-blooded liar. For days I struggled with what to do with this information. I was torn. On one hand, I desperately wanted to expose her to every family member, friend, or acquaintance, letting the whole world know what she truly is and what she had done. But I couldn't. The divorce process was already underway, and there was still a window of time where she could choose to make things nasty and costly. As days went by, with my texts, calls, and attempts to communicate with her unanswered, she finally went out of her way to stop by and check on me. During the encounter, I nearly lost it. I was purposely vague and seemingly indifferent towards her because I wasn't sure what to do. It wasn't until she lost her temper and started yelling at me for acting strange that I asked her directly, "Have you had any contact with Buddy whatsoever since that night?" She replied, "No, I blocked him on everything." I asked again, "Are you sure about that?" She insisted she hadn't and said he was gross and that she could never do that to me. Then I dropped the bombshell. So what about this app and this video I took of the app showing the conversations you two have been having this whole time? The pictures you've sent one another? The plans you've made to sneak around based on my daily schedule? She collapsed onto the ground, sobbing and begging me for forgiveness. I kept my tone indifferent. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm not going to tell anyone about this. And in exchange, you're not going to fight me at all during the divorce process. I'm going to be fair, even though I shouldn't have to be. But you're going to be served with the divorce papers and then do nothing with them. Otherwise, people will have to know about this situation and why I'm being so unreasonable. Your choice." She left, and 2 days later, she was served. Since that day, I've kept my word and haven't told anyone outside of my immediate family. But I know for a fact, through Find My iPhone, that she has visited him every single night since then at the house where he lives with his mother. Her family thinks she's attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings every night, but my screenshots of her location during those times prove otherwise. Seriously, why hasn't she changed her iCloud password? I don't know why I keep compiling evidence, but I do. I'm currently struggling with the anxiety of waiting for the time to pass until her right to fight me in court is over, all the while knowing her family thinks she's on the right path when the truth couldn't be further from that. What hurts the most is the injustice of it all. She gets to be around her family and act like everything is fine, then runs off each night to have sex with him, sneaking back home in the middle of the night to keep up appearances. Meanwhile, I go to work each day, head home to an empty, mentally haunting house, and truly experience what it feels like to be alone in every sense of the word. I'm past the feelings of self-harm, but these are still dark days. I'm taking everything hour by hour, day by day, until the day comes when I know I'll make it out of this hell without my finances being destroyed, and I'll be officially free to leave her behind. What I'll do from there, I don't yet know. I'm just trying to survive until that moment arrives. Thank you all for reading and for your concern, advice, wisdom, and the courage you've given me. You've been my one outlet in a time when I felt completely shut out by the world. I may not know a single thing about you, but I trust you more than I trust my wife, without a shadow of a doubt. Thank you. Update 2. This is my third post here and hopefully my last. The incredible amount of support I've received and the advice given to me here helped me get through the darkest days of my life. I waited until now to chime back in because, at long last, my divorce is official. No more need to hide out after waiting the absurdly long 6 months for the process to finalize. Months and 1 day cooling off period to see if my ex-wife would slip up without me knowing. It's done, I've gone completely no contact and feel like I'm finally able to move forward with my life. Many folks followed my initial posts right after D-Day, as insane and grotesque as they were, and I should have known the rest of the cooling off period would be just as crazy. So I thought I'd share an update on what has transpired since my last post. The last post I shared was 6 weeks after D-Day. What I didn't mention then was that I had already filed my papers with the county to start the divorce process. I followed the advice of many kind Redditors who suggested I give her back the iPad and sever any ties to devices and social media accounts that allowed me to obsess over what she was doing, who she was seeing, or where she was. I knew enough. I knew what I wanted out of this. My approach to the divorce process may have hurt me more emotionally in the long run, but it didn't hit my pocketbook as hard as it could have. After coming to terms with the fact that this woman could never be trusted again in my life, I knew I had to be rid of her. However, I wasn't going to pay her spousal support, amounting to $2,000 per month, for half the length of our marriage. We didn't even have children together. In a no-fault divorce state, as the breadwinning spouse, the idea of paying her a cent for what she had done to me was unacceptable. So I got angry, thought it over, and devised a plan to get out of this marriage and away from her as quickly and fully as possible. Looking back, I'm not proud of the tactics I used to navigate my divorce, but it worked out in the end. I feel my integrity or moral high ground may have taken a hit, a matter of opinion, I suppose. From my point of view, my actions were molehills compared to the mountains of mistrust, hurt, and anguish she caused me. Around the same time as my last post, I already had the divorce papers prepared and submitted to the county, but was waiting for their confirmation. I kept this from my wife, who was still living with her family and was not welcome to stay in my home ever since I first made her leave. I arranged a few times for us to meet up and talk. I wanted to convince her that somehow, some way, I still wanted to find a way to salvage the relationship. A complete lie. But in all our discussions, I made it clear that in my mind, our marriage was over. The vows had been broken, and if we truly wanted to start again, we would need to start fresh. We would need to mutually end this marriage and then begin dating one another again, courting and finding our way into a new, stronger relationship. Typing this out now, I still can't believe she bought it. In fact, I went out of my way to make it as easy and painless as possible for her to hurry the process along and keep it out of the public eye. A prime example was how I had her served. We had a mutual friend come over to my house, the house we had lived in together, and play the third wheel in a handoff signature exchange and conversation. She signed the papers she needed to, sealed up her documents in the envelope they came in, without even scanning through them. I doubt she ever really dug into the minutiae of those tedious legal forms, because I painted a very pretty picture for her, completely absent of any spousal support beyond splitting what was in our account at the time. This was the single largest issue I wanted to avoid, paying her spousal support. Over the first few months, I played the "I need time to think" card pretty hard to avoid seeing her, but I met with her roughly twice a month for dinner or to catch up in a public place, making small talk and pretending to care. These meetings were always in public, so she could never claim I tried anything inappropriate. I kept up the pretense, making her believe I was sincerely processing my feelings, trying to understand what had happened, and aiming for forgiveness so we could potentially reconcile. But in reality, I had no intention of doing so. By maintaining this facade, I managed to remove her from my bank accounts with her own help, get her name off the lease, and even move all her belongings into a storage unit. I convinced her that this would help me heal and that we'd find a new place together eventually. Keeping her in this state of compliance made the challenging separation task surprisingly easy. She thought she was helping us, but I was just setting the stage for my exit. This strategy worked for about 4 out of the 6 months I needed. Then, in early month 4, a family member she was staying with texted me, asking if we were still trying to work things out. This family member knew the truth about Buddy and the whole situation. To maintain the appearance of reconciliation, I replied, "Yes, why?" The family member then sent me a picture of my wife and Buddy having dinner at a restaurant in a nearby city, along with a text saying, "This is happening right now." This family member had coincidentally seen them while out with coworkers. Seeing this, I lost my cool. I texted my wife, asking if she could talk on the phone. She lied, saying she was in an AA meeting and could call me afterward. I shot back with, "I didn't know AA meetings were held at restaurant and that Buddy was now your sponsor." She called me immediately, screaming and accusing me of stalking her. I responded with some harsh words, essentially telling her off and making it clear I wanted nothing to do with her ever again. For the last 2 months of the divorce process, she continued her relationship with Buddy, initially keeping it private, but eventually going public. I blocked them both on social media, but word got back to me through friends. People started reaching out, wanting to know what was going on. My wife had become bold, posting updates and pictures of her and Buddy together. When friends asked, I told them the truth. The relationships I valued, I had to protect. It didn't take much, just the truth. Having my friends' support and hearing them validate my feelings was more important than any financial settlement. Finally, I had people to vent to, and vent I did. Many of them had already spoken to her and wanted to know who this new guy was. She had downplayed the events, never denying her infidelity, but omitting key details. I made sure they knew the whole story. My friends and most of her closest relatives were shocked and, to my relief, chose to support me. I found myself asking them not to rock the boat until the divorce was finalized. As time went on and their relationship became more public, the photos of them together grew bolder, and my phone kept ringing with updates. Eventually, I had to ask people to stop informing me about their developments because it was causing me real emotional pain. Valentine's Day fell just a few days before the finalization of the divorce. Along with the Day of Love came 3 screenshots from 3 different people, all of the same social media post. The 2 of them were embraced, with a romantic caption about how amazing it was that God had delivered such a wonderful man into her life. She expressed her happiness and even mentioned that she hoped to marry him someday, using the phrase, "Whenever a door shuts, God opens a window." I did get a bit of a kick out of the confused comments from extended family and distant friends asking who he was, and even a few shocked emoji faces. I'd like to say that it doesn't bother me to see them together, but it does. Deep down, I still feel a deep sense of loss. However, I also feel an absolute sense of disgust and regret at how cold-hearted and grotesque she is. I can't believe I didn't see this monster in front of me for so many years. And as for Buddy, he's a despicable human being. I have no respect or energy to waste on him. I believe karma will eventually catch up with him for sticking around with my ex-wife, who I now feel like I don't know at all. This realization is making it easier for me to move forward. Finally, last week, the court-appointed date for the dissolution of our marriage arrived. I hadn't been served any papers, and her opportunity to fight for anything beyond what we had previously agreed upon had passed. I kept my entire 401k, avoided spousal support, and incurred no additional debt. There were no lawyers, no court battles, and no further dealings with her. At the end of that day, I blocked her number from my phone. The next day, 7 of my closest friends, 6 of whom were mutual friends, threw me a divorce party, which they posted on Snapchat. It was a celebration worth documenting and earned them a complete social media block from my ex-wife, along with a few nasty texts to some of them. Her maid of honor attended my divorce party and now wants nothing to do with her. P.S. I have one final internal struggle. During my obsession period, when I was scouring her digital footprints, I discovered that she had been sleeping with a man from her hometown while all of this was happening. This guy is an old flame of hers, but has a wife and a child at home. I'm struggling with whether or not I should tell his wife. I feel ashamed that I haven't said anything, but the thought of destroying a family weighs heavily on my conscience. Should I find a way to tell her? Should I identify myself? Or should I keep this to myself? This situation is a persistent worm in my head, making me nauseous, anxious, and giving me nightmares. Any advice would be appreciated. Update 3. Hello again, everyone. In 17 days, it will be the 2nd anniversary of my D-Day. When I look back at my previous posts, I can honestly say I never thought I'd make it this far. The time that has passed has helped heal the pain, burden, hurt, and depression I felt due to my ex-wife's horrific actions. I've received messages from many of you caring folks asking for an update, and all I can say is, be careful what you ask for. Hopefully, this will be my final update on what has taken place since the divorce became final. Since the divorce became official, a lot has happened. For those joining now, here's some background that will leave you stunned, flabbergasted, and appalled. Read the earlier posts to catch up. It's been a while since my last update, but some significant events have occurred that truly showcase how appalling a person can be. After the divorce was finalized in February 2019, I did my best to go no contact, but that's easier said than done. I didn't speak to her, but occasionally I'd see a post from a distant family member I hadn't yet blocked or hear something through mutual friends. My close friends tried to shield me from these updates, but sometimes the news was too big to hide. The first major shock came in May 2019. One of my best friends called to tell me that my ex-wife was getting remarried to a guy from Tennessee. Wait, what? Yes, it was true. My friend's husband, who hadn't yet blocked my ex-wife on Facebook, took screenshots of the events leading up to the big news. This all unfolded between March and July of 2019. Apparently, Buddy and my ex-wife didn't last long after the divorce. I don't know the specifics, but it wasn't surprising. Starting in April, her Facebook status updates hinted that everything happens for a reason and suggested she was falling in love with someone new. Then, out of nowhere, in July, she posted a picture and caption on her wall. The picture showed her and a man no one recognized, standing in a courthouse, holding hands with rings on their fingers and what looked like a marriage certificate. The post was geotagged in California and updated with her new last name. The caption said something like, "Excited to start the rest of my life with such an amazing man, feeling so blessed. Look out, Tennessee, here we come." I know this entire story from my first post until now may seem unbelievable, but I assure you it's the truth. These next details might be hard to believe, but please trust me. My intense curiosity got the best of me, so I reached out to one of her cousin-in-laws, someone I got along with well, to get the full story. He obliged. Her new husband was someone she met online. They had been talking for a few months over the phone and through texts. They fell hard and fast for each other, and he proposed to her during a phone call. She said yes, and they couldn't wait. Within a week of the proposal, she made a serious attempt to inform her family and invite them to the wedding, which took place in a small town about 2 hours from our hometown. He flew out to California, and the marriage took place on a Saturday, the first time they met face to face. They were now husband and wife. The kicker? Not one person from her family attended the courthouse wedding. Whether it was due to the short notice or lack of respect, they got married without any family present. That Sunday, they packed a moving truck with her belongings and set off for Tennessee on Monday. I couldn't believe it. I've heard it from enough people to know the story is true, but it was unbelievable at the time. That poor man. If only he knew. I'm sure if he knew, he wouldn't have gotten married in California, a no-fault state where he could face the same situation I did with her. Hopefully, he was simply uninformed rather than that naive. For now, I did the best I could to move on. I tried to shake the thought of both of them from my mind, but I did find solace in knowing they were moving far away, ensuring I'd never have to worry about running into her again. Summer came and went in 2019, but right in the middle of fall, another bombshell hit. While scrolling through Instagram, I stumbled upon a video of my ex-wife holding a plate in front of her father, who had his eyes covered. Before I could comprehend what I was seeing, the plate was revealed to hold a single cookie covered in blue frosting. My ex-wife's voice counted down. 3, 2, 1, it's a boy. Her father uncovered his eyes in excitement. It was a gender reveal video. I couldn't believe it. Why was I seeing this? Her mother had just created a completely public Instagram account and posted the video. Somehow Instagram's algorithm thought I'd be interested in seeing it. I lost it. Those were some really bad days filled with sleepless nights. The sickening feeling was a mix of disgust, pain, frustration, and even a bit of jealousy. One of my greatest aspirations in life is to become a father, and had our lives followed a different path, this could have been our child. I could have been the one becoming a father. I'm 32 now, and thought I'd be a father by this age, but instead, I'm not even on a path toward a relationship, let alone fatherhood. I know I have time to achieve this dream with someone I love and who loves me, but it's hard not to compare my reality to where I thought I'd be by now. In this scenario, though, I'd much rather be in my position than the soon-to-be fathers. By now, the baby is probably born. Fortunately, I haven't heard any updates thanks to the support of those around me who shield me from such news. It's better not knowing than being burdened by the details. The good news is that as time passes, there are more and more days when she and her chaotic life don't cross my mind at all. That's progress. However, there are still bad days. made worse by the stay-at-home orders creating unbearably depressing moments. I'm fortunate to work as an independent contractor from home, but those days are lonely. I make a point to get out and walk, but I miss the gym. I visit my parents as much as I can to have company beyond a webinar or phone call. I know this shared situation affects all our lives, and it's not something I'm going through alone. When I need hope, I think back to the early days following my D-Day and how I thought I'd never make it through. Yet here I am, and I'll make it through this difficult time as well, one day at a time, one moment to the next if need be. Time moves forward, no matter how slowly it seems. Thank you all for taking the time to read my update and catch up on what's transpired. I want to offer my sincerest gratitude to those who commented, messaged me, and encouraged me throughout this entire ordeal. Without the strength of this community, I wouldn't have found the courage to rebuild my life and find happiness again. Here's to another 2 years of surviving and thriving. Update 4. So, it's been 3 years since D-Day and more than a year since my last post. This past year has been the first where I've been able to finally focus on myself. I don't have an update on my ex-wife or her situation because I've gone completely no contact with her entire family and blocked all forms of communication. I've even had to mute and block mutual friends where unwanted information might slip through. From past experiences, I knew that keeping any ties to that chapter of my life would only hinder my progress. Distancing myself from her and her family was one of the hardest but most necessary steps I had to take to move forward. They were my family too, and losing those relationships felt both difficult and unfair. I loved some of them, as if they were my own blood relatives. However, going no contact has been the best decision for my mental health and progress. As time passes, I find that there are far more days where I don't think about her at all. Even when I do, it's with a sense of relief thinking, thank God I dodged that bullet, rather than feeling sorrow or pain. During the pandemic, I made a drastic career change and started my own independent consulting business in tech support and IT system design. It was a leap of faith that paid off quickly. I landed a few contracts relatively fast, including 2 with government organizations in my county. It's been a lot of work, but both contracts have been renewed for another 12 months, and there's no sign of slowing down. Working for myself and having the freedom to make decisions without anyone depending on my success, except for myself, has been invigorating. I take immense pride in the work I deliver to my clients. This newfound sense of self-worth has transformed how I view my past and present. My work life is stable, my finances are in the best shape they've ever been, and my mind is mostly free from haunting memories. Physically, I'm in better shape than I've been since this whole ordeal started. I feel good about myself as a man. However, one area of concern remains: my general lack of trust in people, especially in a romantic sense. This lack of trust made leaving my job easy and starting my own business a no-brainer, since I only had to rely on myself. Romantically, my desire to be with someone has diminished significantly. I'm content being alone. My brief foray into online dating revealed it to be a cesspool of broken people. After 3 or 4 dates, I realized that many women weren't looking for anything substantial, despite what their profiles suggested. Instead, they seemed to be seeking attention from multiple men. I felt like I was just another player in their field, and I've had enough of that for a lifetime. I don't mean to sound disrespectful toward women or suggest that I've given up on romance entirely. There's a huge part of me that still yearns for connection and intimacy. I want to share my life with someone special. However, I'm not willing to let just anyone into my life for the sake of not being alone. I'm willing to be patient, do the work I need to do, and keep my eyes, ears, and heart open to the possibility of loving again someday. An annoying self-dialogue often pops into my head, reminding me that I'm 34 years old and should have had a wife and kids by now. I see my friends paying mortgages, going on trips, doting over their children, and seemingly living their best lives. Meanwhile, I have money in the bank, but that doesn't necessarily make me feel better about my life. This is something I need to continue working on, but I know that holding myself to an arbitrary timeline isn't helpful. For now, I'm grateful for the life I'm leading. I'm blessed beyond belief not to be living a different version of my life with my ex-wife still tied to me. I'm hopeful that if I continue putting myself first and making the most of my days, I'll be able to look back and be proud of who I am and what I've accomplished, despite the rough start. Thank you all for your time, advice, support, and words of wisdom. I wouldn't have made it without you.